Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's Alexander Hilly123 here, and it's time for a new video. And as you can see from the title, today it is time for a new gaming pickups video coming at you in the last week of February. And the last gaming pickups video was in August, so it's been about 6 months or so. September, October, November, December, January, February. Yeah, just over 6 months since the last one. They tend to be every 6 months, and if you don't know, all these videos are and have been since I started doing them in about 2012. Not a little bit earlier actually, pickups video. It's just my last 5 games that I've purchased, either digital or physical. If they're a first time playthrough, first time playing the game, I will make a video discussing that game. And it tends to be the case that there's always 5 to discuss. Now this is a bit of a bumper edition. It's probably going to be on the longer side. My longest ever, I just had a look at the playlist, is 33 minutes. This might just be a little over that. We've got a lot to talk about, and I hope you're sitting comfortably, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got quite a few games that I'm passionate about. A few of my kind of games, so you're more so, there's certain games that I buy, I'll never play again. Certain games that I bought and didn't like, not much to say about them, etc, etc. There's some that I want to delve into a little bit further. We'll discuss them. I always discuss them as well in the order that I purchased them. So having a look at my little slip of paper here with the details, we've got 5 games to talk about, of course. 1 on the original Xbox 360, and then all the rest are Series X games, obviously played on the Series X. And out of the 5, we have 1, 2, 3 physical, 2 digital. Fuck digital only video games, but sometimes needs must. I have a balance. 75% physical these days, 25% digital. But, ladies and gentlemen, I've got the Wikipedia page up of each game. Let us go. And the first one is the physical game, the Xbox 360 game, and it is none other than the original, or was it the original? I can't remember how many praise there have been, but I played the 2017 game, not going to get into it, ladies and gentlemen, although it's very different than the 2006 Prey. I did not enjoy that game, and overall I enjoyed this more than the 2017 game, both very different. This is a first-person shooter. Says here that it was developed by the Human Head Studios, brilliant name, published by 2K Games, and released, ladies and gentlemen, in the summer of 2006. And I just want to say, straight off the bat here, that for me, the first couple of hours of this game, the narrative, the game world, for its time, the graphics, the voice acting, this had an incredibly strong start, and I was getting very, very excited until the combat began. And overall, as an all-encompassing experience, this is a good game. I still think it's aged relatively well. Some of the guns felt like shit, and the puzzles, as far as I remember, this is 6 months ago now, ladies and gentlemen, so it's not exactly all in my brain, it's a bit vague, but I remember some of the puzzles and the kind of portals that you could create, a bit like the game Portal actually, were a bit frustrating, and there were times when you could turn off the gravity in a room and it kind of frustrated me, and there was a lot of long distance shooting, if I remember correctly. And this is the kind of game that doesn't have an upgrade system, and I remember some of the deaths being a bit cheap also. It's a real mixed bag overall. I did enjoy it, I did rage at it, and if you've watched me before with these pickups videos, you might remember. And if you don't, I'll tell you now. I go through phases having bouts of rage whilst playing games, and then go through phases of not raging at all. And this caught me in a bit of a bad place. I nearly put it down. I remember a few particular moments where I was raging, but played through, enjoyed it. Good game. The graphics, very nice. It runs on the Doom 3 engine, I think. And we play as a Native American gentleman named Tommy, and his missus, I think her name is Jen, and his grandfather or something. They own a bar, and there's, I think it's Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reapers playing. Damn, son. Get copyrighted. And the game world, the enemies, from what I remember, the art design and the look of them was cool, but the gunplay was a bit frustrating as far as I remember. And I think it's something along the lines of the sniper aim was like Max Payne 2, which I also played last year, where you got to zoom in with the A button or some shit, just archaic controls. Overall, Prey, a good game, not a great game, frustration, but fun, great game world. I don't think it ever got better than its opening. I do think its opening was the best thing about it, where they all get abducted, spoilers, and that was really cool. But some of the latter parts of the game did drag. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, sorry I have to be a bit vague with that one, but it's a while since I played it, and I've got the Wikipedia page open, and I've not even really spoke that much in depth about it. But you want to check the Wikipedia page out for that game, because it shows you the development hell that happened over many years, over many generations with that game. It's a miracle it was ever made. Well, I'm glad it did. And there was meant to be a sequel, but it never happened. But speaking of sequels, ladies and gentlemen, coming in as the first, I should say, digital game, it is A Plague Tale Requiem, the sequel to A Plague Tale Innocence, released in 2019. Developed by Asobo Studios, they are French, and published by Focus Entertainment. Those motherfuckers are doing some work these days of publishing all sorts. Only released in October. My God, it seems so much longer than 4 months ago that I played this. But this game is on a much grander scale. I mean, both Plague Tale games look very, very nice. But this game, graphically, is incredible. The gameplay, there's much more to do. The upgrade paths, you had a lot more freedom. The voice acting was weird with this game, and I'm jumping all over the shop with this one. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. I've not done one of these pickups videos in a while. But overall, with Plague Tale Requiem, sometimes you just can't put your finger on why a game didn't do it for you as much as you were hoping. And I have to say that A Plague Tale is more playable from a gameplay aspect. It's more fun, I should say, than A Plague Tale Innocence. But I feel like the game was too long. I think it took me it was over 20 hours it took me to complete it. Way too long for this kind of game, in my opinion. Some of the mechanics and the use of the rats with Hugo kind of outstayed their welcome, and there were some really frustrating moments as well. Now, there's no achievement or trophy for completing this game on hard, so when it gives you the option of easy, normal, hard, you don't need to take my advice, ladies and gentlemen, but unless you're someone who really loves a hardcore challenge no matter what, I wouldn't go and play hard mode on this game. I think normal is absolutely fine. You play as Amicia alongside her brother Hugo. If you played the original, it's the exact same situation. I think it's set a few years, perhaps, maybe, after the first game. Hugo basically is the Rat King. He can control the rats, and the powers that be want him for their own good because they're going to use his powers to fuck shit up. That's basically the narrative here. And it's, not only the graphics beautiful, but its art style and the setting is absolutely incredible. The audio, there's a guy called Olivier de Riviere. I'm not making that name up. He composed Streets of Rage 4, Dying Light 2, I do believe, and this game, Plague Tale 2. This motherfucker, I'm telling you now, he's making some moves. This guy's audio and music in games is incredible, and I'm excited to see what this guy does next, because Streets of Rage 4, Dying Light 2's got a great soundtrack. How do I know that? And Plague Tale was also fantastic. So yeah, the audio in this game, brilliant. Now, the voice acting was very weird, because obviously this is set in France, and in the first game, it's English voice actors in a French accent. Weird in itself, of course. But in this game, it's English voice acting with an English accent, and it didn't fit the bill. But I do believe, I'm not 100% sure in saying this, I'm right here, but I do believe it's the same voice actors with a different accent. They were obviously told, can you have an English accent now? Maybe it's their own accent instead of the French accent they were putting on, I do believe. I'm not 100% sure, but it just caught me off guard, and I preferred the voice acting in the first game. A few reoccurring characters in this game, like, what's his name? Lucas, great character, he was in the first game. And Hugo and Amicia's mother as well. Not going to spoil the ending for you guys, but that ending, whoa, wow, quite something. And there wasn't a proper final boss, but I don't want to give it away, but it was quite a heavy ending, and there's something that happens right at the end that shows there could be a third game, but in a totally different game world, and that is intriguing, and I hope they carry it on, because it's very brave. It could make or break the third game, because it has to completely change the gameplay. If you've seen that last cutscene after the credits, you'll know what I'm talking about. Could be very interesting indeed, ladies and gentlemen. This game got incredible reviews. I just think it was a bit too long. And although I love linear kind of, oh, I've got limited resources kind of gameplay, like Last of Us, Evil Within, Dead Space, etc., I don't know if this game did enough with the time that it had. The puzzles are okay, some of them are a bit frustrating, a bit clunky. A good game, you've got to remember that I do believe, let's have a look here, Asobo Studios, they're not a massive dev. You look at the kind of games they've made, Plague Tale is by far the biggest thing these guys have ever done. So, fair play to them. Good game, not as good maybe as I was hoping for, but let's see what happens with the third game, because I do believe there will be one. It's a solid 7.5, 8 out of 10. But ladies and gentlemen, could I give this next game a 7 out of 10? A game that I'm currently doing my hardcore playthrough of, and I'm just not sure that this game fit the bill. If you know anything about Alexander Hilly 123, you'll know he was so hyped, speaking about myself in the first person earlier, for this game, and it was a complete and utter shit show at launch. So many modern games I watch people get hyped for, and it turns out absolutely shit, and I'm there laughing thinking, well, you pre-ordered it. But I shouldn't laugh, because a person pays into a game, a consumer pays into a product, they shouldn't be lambasted for supporting something that they liked the look of, or they supported and thought, that's going to be my bag, that's something that I'm going to enjoy. And ladies and gentlemen, it's none other than the Callisto Protocol, the return to survival horror, the fully fledged masterpiece. But of course, it was not. I can't really be asked, to be perfectly honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, telling you the shit show that happened at launch of this game. When I loaded it up, it fucked the sound on my Xbox up. Everything sounded like it was underwater. And I can't remember now, but I had to go into settings. It messed the whole audio on my Xbox up. The game did. I'm being serious here. I have no idea how it happened. So I had to do something to change it. I started up the game. It crashed a few times. It was jerky as fuck. I was recording it from a YouTube, and I was getting so upset and angry because I waited so long for the game. I was seeing online, there's going to be like a 40 gigabyte fucking patch the next day. And it was like, no, I want to play it now. And it's not that kind of, I want to play it now, I'm a spoiled brat mentality. It was just like, I could wait a day, but I've waited for this, and there's no guarantee that they're going to fix it in the next day. It was a shit show at launch. Trust me, there's a lot of other things that popped off, especially with the PC version of the game. It was a bloody slideshow. And then the game's director, Mr. Glenn Schofield, who I know very well from, being the director of, he came out and said something along the lines of the incorrect version of the game was put out for release on Steam on the day or something. It was like, bit far-fetched, that, Glenn. And apparently the Xbox Series X version was worse than the PS5 version. You play it right now, it works, it's serviceable, it hits 60 FPS in performance mode. It's not perfect. Let's just speak of the pros of this game. It's a survival horror sci-fi game, ladies and gentlemen, heavily inspired by Dead Space, we'll be speaking about in a moment, of course. Primarily involving melee combat. And I was hooked right in because it's Glenn Schofield, Dead Space, sci-fi, the fact that survival horror hasn't been around much. It's certainly showing a resurgence at the moment, however, with a lot of remakes, it has to be said. But I was very hyped for this game, and we'll talk about the pros first. The game sounds and looks phenomenal. The graphics are gorgeous. It plays well now on whatever system you do indeed get it on. Some aspects of the gameplay are really fun. The voice acting is incredible. And overall, if you like survival horror, maybe if you haven't already bought it, wait for a price reduction and then play it. I like some aspects of using the baton. You get a stun baton about 5-10% into the game after you get like a pickaxe or some shit right at the start. But using the baton, and then you've got to dodge the enemy's moves, and this is why I said I wanted to speak a little bit more in depth in this video, ladies and gentlemen. I knew there'd be a problem with this game's combat when the tutorial said there's no timing to the dodges, you've just got to be holding left or right when the enemy attacks. You look on the Reddit page and any hardcore fans of this game, because despite it not selling very well, which doesn't surprise me at all, because this game deserved to be shit on at launch. It deserved the bad reviews and it deserved a lot of the shit that it got, but there are hardcore fans out there that think this game is incredibly easy, and it's been nerfed as well because they released patches to make the game easier, and the hardcore fans didn't like that. However, the kind of things that they improved were the healing animation, which sees your character Jacob get on a knee, get the fucking syringe, and inject it into his neck like that. The original animation took about 7 seconds. There's no point in an animation that long because you're going to get fucking hit in the meantime. It was stupid. So by making it faster, it now gives you a chance to heal in combat. But healing is part of the satisfaction of a survival horror game. It's like in Evil Within 1 when you get the syringe and you jab it in your arm. It's a split second or two at most of downtime. It's a bit of jeopardy whether you can heal and get away with it. Or if you're not in combat, yeah, just heal. In this game, though, healing is not satisfying. The inventory, I'm now moving on to the cons of this game, by the way, if you can't tell. You only get 6 inventory slots. Like, what is this? Original Resident Evil 96 as Chris? 6 inventory slots. So, the game's movement as Jacob is so tanky and sluggish and slow, it's infuriating. And if you try and run away from an enemy in combat, the game's camera keeps you locked in to look at that enemy. If you turn your back on them, they're going to jump you, they're going to be right on you. It doesn't feel fair. And also one thing that they patched out, although it can still happen, let me tell you, is you can get hit. If you've got 3 enemies and you've only got melee and you're hitting one of them, some other fucker is hitting you off screen. And you can take damage that just isn't fair. It isn't fair. And the upgrade system as well. It doesn't make sense to me. This game's upgrade system makes no sense. You get 2 handguns that feel shit, and they're similar to each other. You get a riot gun and a skunk gun. One's like a small shotgun, the other's a big shotgun, but they don't really do anything anyway. The guns don't feel like they make much of a difference in this game. You got a shotgun, it reminds me of Resident Evil 6, which is not a good thing to say, where in that game, you got a magnum, which would take 3 bullets to kill an enemy. But you got a melee attack, which costs nothing, and if I remember correctly on that retarded game, you can say that word on YouTube, and it's definitely right in this context, you could throw an enemy over your shoulder and kill them immediately. No ammo. So why would you use the Magnum? I don't know. And this game's gameplay, you increased the power of the baton. You increased the GRP, which, you know, I've just been playing Dead Space. Unlimited kinesis. In the Callisto, it's incredibly limited, and more often than not, it runs out whilst you're hovering. You're using it on an enemy. They're hovering in the air, and you can throw them out of the game world, and it's an instant kill on them. You won't get the loot, but it's worth it. They're a pain in the arse. But you drop them a lot of the time, and the mechanics and the movement is so heavy that you drop them accidentally. There's some good things about this game, like the spikes in the wall. God knows why they're there. It's so dumb. The game looks glorious. There's a few different varieties of enemies, but there's also this tiny enemy which is like a crawler in the Dead Space games, but instead of a whole bunch of them, there's just one. But they jump at you all the time. You've got to mash the Y button, but you take damage. Yet many times in the game, when you replay the game, I promise you this, you will forget where they are, and you'll nearly be killed by these stupid things. But the guns are so slow, even when you heighten the sensitivity, it's just bulky, and it's not good. And another thing about this game is you can't skip the cutscenes. I skipped the cutscenes on The Last of Us, and I feel guilty sometimes because they're so glorious. This game's narrative, its story, the logs that are in the game, the world building, it wasn't there. A lot of the logs were just one sentence, and it felt incredibly half-arsed compared to the absolute glorious logs that you receive in the Dead Space games. You know, you compare them to something like BioShock, it's not on the same level, man. Maybe Glenn did it like that on purpose because he believed that there'd be a sequel, and apparently there is going to be a story DLC in the summer, but are these guys really going to commit now to a potential sequel? Because I've spoken about it before, with modern gaming, these devs, they don't give a flying fuck what happens in the future. They still put sequel bait in their games just in case. Oh, probably not going to work on a sequel, guys, but we'll leave it open-ended ending so that there might be a sequel 10 years in the fucking future like Alan Wake 2. so I will be hyped for, but I don't know if there'll be a sequel to this game, and the blueprint is there. Make the story better. Make the gameplay not as stodgy and as boring. Include some puzzles. There's not one puzzle in Callisto Protocol. It's so bad for that. There should be some easy puzzles that break up the monotony of the gameplay, but there's not. And the enemies are also incredibly tanky. And a lot of people shit the bed with this and said that the game's incredibly hard. Once you get used to its mechanics, it's not that hard. I've played The Evil Within on Akuma. I've played Last of Us on Grounded. These kind of difficulties where you die again and again and again. And I raged during all those hardest difficulty playthroughs, but the gameplay was fun. And there was an element of, right, I can approach this differently. I'm going to use many different weapons here. I'm going to go stealthy. I'm going to try something. In my head, I had a variation of what I could do. On the Callisto Protocol, there's a part where you have this water slide, which is an on-rails part where you go down the water and there's traps and you get fucked up brutally. And it's a narrow corridor of 4 enemies that all morph into the second form that the game has just about 5-10 minutes ago shown you. And on my hardcore playthrough, they've just released hardcore. Basically, what is hardcore? You get next to no loot, you can barely upgrade, but it's exactly the same game, apart from the enemies being a little tankier. That's it. And it's not fun, and it wasn't justifiable, in my opinion, them making this hardcore mode just for 20 gamer score. But of course, yours truly was stupid enough to try it. I died there about 20 times in a row, and it was fucking infuriating because there's no leeway with the gameplay. Narrow corridor. About 5 bullets in my gun at that time because the game's balls hard on hardcore. I've got the GRP, which you can upgrade it so it does damage when you launch them back. Did it? Does it kill them? No. The upgrade system makes no sense, apart from the alt fires of the weapons, which one-shot normal enemies. But it's cost so much, you ain't going to get those upgrades until New Game Plus, apart from one, probably. Callisto Protocol is such a frustrating game for me because it could have been incredible, but it doesn't even get close. It's frustrating. Yet and still, when I say all these things, I will replay it in the future. I don't know what I'm going to do with hardcore, because I stopped hardcore to play this game's hardest difficulty. I might return to it, but I can see this game's difficulty on hardcore being game-breaking. I can see myself getting locked out by my resources, and that's not fun. Basically, this difficulty is like maximum security, all the enemies are tankier, and the loot is non-existent, and I have nowhere near the amount of upgrades as I did about 30% into my max security playthrough than I do on hardcore. I'd love to say this game's a 7 out of 10, but I'm not sure it is. I love linear sci-fi horror, but I don't know, man. Looks great voice acting. I wish it wasn't as stodgy and slow. Introduce puzzles. Let's see what they do with the DLC, and there's a contagion mode as well. Although a lot of people... This game's a shit show. You have a look on the Reddit, people argue about this game's gameplay. Some people think it's incredibly easy and they can do it with their eyes closed, and some people think it's the hardest game ever made. It's like I've been saying lately, ladies and gentlemen, it's the modern day in a nutshell. It's got to be black and white, there's no grey areas. But for me, this whole motherfucking life's a grey area. So I think it's quite a tough game. It's on the harder side, especially for casual gamers, but it's not as hard as people have said, but hardcore will kick your ass. But the gameplay for me, and I just want to say this before we move on to Dying Light 2, the problem is enemies on Callisto Protocol will attack you with like a punch like that, and that's when you dodge left or right. But I'm not a mind reader, and as such, I don't know if they're going to go in for a 1-hit attack, a 2-hit attack, or a 3-hit attack, which they don't do at the start of the game. If I anticipate an enemy to do 1 hit and he's going to hit me again, after I dodge that first time, you go to hit him and you clash together like that, and you still take damage, and then he'll fuck you up. If you stand there in front of him and don't attack, because you're anticipating dodging, you'll go into a grab animation where you've got to mash out with Y or triangle on the PlayStation. You will take damage. The game's gameplay could have been a lot more fun. Look at The Last of Us 2's melee. You dodge with L1, you go in, you strike them. It could have been a lot more fun, but I just prefer gunplay to melee, and I'm somebody who, I mean, it's fun. Beating the shit out of a zombie kind of enemy with a baton is fun. Seeing them launch across the floor, yeah, it's satisfying at times, but the guns look boring as well, and there's not enough variety. That assault rifle near the end of the game and the tactical pistol, they cost loads even when it's not on hardcore, but there's no point in buying them. As you can tell, I could talk about this game all day. I was so hyped about it. Right, Dying Light 2. I've got to go quick now, ladies and gentlemen. I've not completed it, and as such, sometimes when I do these videos, I'm in different stages. You know, there's some games that I have spoke about before that I've not completed, and I just move on. I kind of do want to talk about Dying Light 2, because the fact of the matter is, I've plugged well over 60 freaking hours into this game and not completed it, and I hate doing this, but I thought that a month would be enough time, but it turns out, when you're an adult, a month isn't that long. Holy shit, because Dead Space Remake came out, and then I haven't completed Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2, here is the condensed version, big time condensed. It's easier than the first game, it's less frustrating, but is it less fun? Possibly. I don't know, it's an interesting one. The game's game world is a lot more green and grassy, as opposed to that yellow tint that the first game had. You get a paraglider, like the first game. You get a grappling hook, but it's not as good. Great upgrade system, very fun, a lot of things to do. However, the game takes precedent on the game world map. You know, this is Ubisoft through and through, this game, but Ubisoft when they weren't a pile of shit that they are now. A lot of activities to do on the map, a lot of quests, a lot of side quests. The story, so far, I think, apparently, from what I've seen, I'm about 80% of the way in. It's going to take me about 10-15 more hours to do, I do believe, and I've not played it for well over a month now because of the Dead Space remake coming out and, you know, playing more Callisto, but I've enjoyed the game, but I just feel like it's way too long, and also the game has these shops, I can't remember what they're called, but you're meant to go in them at night. This game is obsessed with forcing you to play at night. Newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, most people played the first game in the daytime because the nighttime was freaking outrageous in the first game. You got shat on. It was very tough. Dying Light is an unforgiving game, and that's on normal difficulty. And yet again, it's this interesting kind of balance where the hardcore fans are getting triggered because something's being watered down for the casuals. But, you know, I don't know how hard people want the games. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I'm playing Dying Light 2 on normal. It's easier than the first game, but the first game was quite frustrating. There's tons of different mechanics in play with Dying Light, but, you know, you get grenades and molotovs and bombs, but then you get those volatile enemies, and you use all them on a volatile, and it does jack shit to it. And it's just an intense, frustrating game at times. But I do like Dying Light 2. I like aspects of it better than the first game. Some of the side quests are quite interesting because you'll do something and then something will happen and you wouldn't be expecting it. And it's kind of like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to happen. And you do something pretty mundane, but then the result of the side quest, from, for example, the quest giver, they do something that you weren't anticipating. And the story, you get choices now. I kind of think I've been spoiled because you know what it's like. I'm playing the game and I'm searching for things online, and then some fucking clickbait idiot releases a video that I see in my recommended videos. So whatever, but you're looking for your sister called Mia, and then you've got this other woman who comes into the story about halfway in. And I think the character who's called Aiden, we're going to get a choice to simp for the woman or find your sister. For me, I'm all in there for the sister. Jesus, that sounds bad. But you know what I mean. That's Aiden's intentions, and I'm going to stick to that regardless of what happens. Even though I get the feeling, with about 10-15 hours left, I don't think you can actually see his sister physically. I think she's probably going to be dead anyway, but I don't know. I'm playing this on a Series X. I've got to say, the game looks and plays beautifully, really smooth. Great upgrade system. The melee in this game, you know how in the first game, for the first 25% of the game, the weapons are absolutely awful? They're not in this game. The enemies aren't as tanky. But tanky enemies can be really shit. But there's just pros and cons. I'm sorry to make this a grey area again, but I can't say this is definitely worse or better than Dying Light 1. There's some things I prefer. There's some things I like less. There's some things that really annoy me. I do miss being able to have that upgrade in the first game where you covered yourself in the zombie guts and then you broke the neck from behind. That was quite a late game, but once you got that in the first game, Chef's kiss, ladies and gentlemen, because it was bloody amazing. But that's not a necessity. The enemies don't feel as dangerous in this game. The human fighting, though, is definitely better in Dying Light 2. Pros and cons, I do believe, and I don't know why, but people really hated this game. I don't know why. I'm relatively enjoying it. The fun but flawed games, 7.5, 8 out of 10. Maybe one day you guys will find out what I think of it by the end, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be going 40 minutes. I've got 9.5 minutes now to talk about the Dead Space remake. As I am recording this video, I have just uploaded part 23, the last part of my Dead Space remake hard difficulty first playthrough. The journalists are unanimous. It's a masterpiece. A lot of the gamers themselves are saying very nice things. There's some people, though, who are saying that this is absolutely nowhere near as good as others are saying. What's Mr. Grey Area saying? Mr. Alexander Hilly 123. I'm saying a bit of everything. If I'm being totally honest, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good game. However, when you've got Electronic Arts money, you know, Daddy Electronic Arts giving you all this money to make a remake of an already incredible game, you shouldn't be fucking up in the first place. Gotta say, sorry to sound like a broken record, there's things I prefer to this game than the original. There's more certainly things that I prefer about the original to the remake. Now, unlike everything we spoke of in this video and most of the things that I talk about with the pickups videos as a casual gamer, Dead Space 1 and 2 are two of my all-time favourite games, and I'm not being big-headed, but I'm pretty good at them, especially Dead Space 2. But, as I should be, because I played them so much. And of course, when you play a game for the first time, it might be a remake, but the mechanics, obviously, shoot for the limbs, telekinesis, use the stasis, use the alt fires intelligently, blah, 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 blah. That's similar, yes, but the physics of the enemies are different, and there's many other things you've got to factor into consideration. I feel like the balance of old and new with this game was good. The backtracking instead of power node doors was intriguing. I wish that you had your locator when you hold it down, like in Dead Space 1 and 2, or just 2 I think. You pressed up and down of the D-pad, and let's say Isaac was facing this way, and that's the objective, but there's a store and a bench behind him. Press down, and he'd turn around 180 and show you where the store and the bench was. They got rid of that, but not only that, with these doors, there's basically clearance. So level 1, 2, 3 clearance, and then doors with a star on them, which means master key, basically. You've got to backtrack and do side quests throughout the game to get into those areas. And then you get maybe a power node, maybe 5,000 credits. You're given a little bit of a payoff. If you get and buy the weapon upgrades from the store as well, you get a spare power node for doing so. I think one thing that I really, really like about this game, and I'm on my 4th playthrough now, near the end of my first impossible playthrough, which is the permadeath difficulty, they have made it so that the ammo is much more limited. And it will be on every playthrough, I think, no matter how many times you've played the game. That's something that I love in my survival horror games. Brilliant. However, I watched Core Carnage's playthrough, and to be fair to him, he played with the flamethrower as well. The flamethrower, by the way, really good. Like it is in Dead Space 2, to be fair. But in the original game, it's trash. It's absolute trash. He played with the plasma cutter and flamethrower. And honestly, I think this game, and this is a problem with the first Dead Space, if you use 4 weapons, you're making the game harder for yourself. And that shouldn't be the way it is. The more weapons you have, and the more alt fires, the more possibilities you get. But the game's ammo drops, the first game, are absolutely insane. The game, you don't have a force gun? Here's 30 force gun ammo. Here's 12 Ripper blades. I've not got these weapons though. And then, of course, then you can sell them, but money goes not as far in this game. You're constantly micromanaging in the store to buy a little bit of ammo, a little bit of health. At least I am doing at the moment on Impossible. And I'm not complaining. I like that. I just wish that I wasn't punished for having 4 weapons, because I feel like I am. But regardless, I'm still using 4 fucking weapons because I want to. I'm currently rocking out with a plasma cutter, pulse rifle, contact beam and force gun. Anyway, I'm getting too in-depth with the gunplay. I don't think this game looks as good as Callisto Protocol. Now, if you've not played both games, you can see it on YouTube in 720p, ladies and gentlemen. But unless you've played both games, don't at me, motherfuckers, because you don't know. I think Callisto is the better looking game. it's nowhere near as fun. This game is too dark. I don't think this game is too dark because there are rooms that are bright. I remember when the devs before release were doing this kind of play and chat thing I think it was last summer. Two of the devs and two random people who I can't remember, this big fat guy, this black fella, and this woman who was annoying and I wanted to strangle her. And she was saying, guys, please make the game dark. And I was like, fucking shut up. The game doesn't need to be so dark. You need that balance in a game like this. I think I've just realised that, I think the video and audio are going to be out of sync. Oh well. You need a balance. The game's too dark. And it's got this yellow haze effect in a lot of rooms where you can't see where you're going. And another thing that frustrates me about Dead Space Remake, you can't tell where the friggin' hell the enemies are coming from. Stereo headphones, whatever you're playing in, 3D surround sound, playing through the speakers, do what you want, turn that volume up. You are still not going to know whether that lurker has spawned right behind you and he's a foot away or if he's about a mile away. You won't know. The audio design in this game is not as good as the original. Put some respect on the original because there's been a lot of retconning on that original 2008 masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people acting as if it's a shit game. It's not. It's one of the best games ever made. It still looks glorious, and the sound design, it might be one of the top 10 games ever made, and that's me saying it knowing that I've not played 5% of the video games ever made, for example. It's that good. I can easily categorically say. The remake, however, the audio design just isn't as good. It's not as good, They've got... A lot of the sound is the same, like the doors mechanically open, the big, bulky mechanical doors. The sound of Isaac putting his helmet back on, the metallic clanks, shit like that. It's okay in the remake, but everything seems a little low to me. I don't know, and like I say, I'd never know where enemies are spawning from, which sounds like a good thing, but it isn't. It really isn't. And I can't put my finger on it. Some of the characters as well and the voice acting is way too cheesy. Hammond is a fucking idiot. In the original, he's played by Peter Mensa, who was in 300. This is Sparta! And his performance as Hammond was fantastic. And obviously Kendra thinks that he's double-crossing him. He isn't. We all know the story with Kendra and what she's up to, but she wasn't as good in the remake. Gunnar Wright as Isaac, I mean, it broke my heart when he's kind of shouting and he sounds a bit older, but that's time, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? It's been like 13 years since his performance in Dead Space 2. He's a lot older now and he looks a lot older as well. But I think he did a pretty good job. Mercer, didn't like him as much either. Overall, if I had to play one or the other, I mean, it's early days yet for the remake. I still want, once I've completed on Impossible, to do it again. Later in the year, 100%, I will be bringing out one video per chapter, so that'll be 12 videos. Impossible difficulty commentary walkthrough, where I'll stay on microphone the whole time. And it could be emotional. It could be emotional. Because the permadeath in this game, it's like Dead Space 3. And I just don't know why. Give me Dead Space 2 hardcore over 3 any day. Because it gives you a tactical decision. With Dead Space 3 or Dead Space Remake, you can save the game as much as you want. But if you die, you may as well not save at all. Dead Space 2, if you save the game and you die, you go back to your last save. You can decide, I'm going to save before this very difficult encounter. I'm going to save just before I get all this loot, so if I die I can spend it differently. I can approach it differently. Where am I going to make my second save, my third save? You can be tactical, like you were in the Evolving 2 on Classic, for example, as well. And other such games with limited saves. But here, the saves mean nothing. And apparently, if you can pause the game before you die, you can just go back out to the main menu anyway. The drag tentacles, when you get dragged along the ground and you've got to shoot before you get put into the hole and you're insta-killed, the third one is completely broken. In Chapter 10, the third one, just after Mercer gets killed, it's completely broken because the yellow spot is behind a fucking wall all the time. I still don't like Chapter 6 with hydroponics. That was always my least favourite chapter in the main game. This game has an obsession with those little pods that the Guardian spits out, and they launch projectiles at you. And the Lurkers, they love launching projectiles. To be fair, the original game, back when I was a noob, when I first played the game, that annoyed me as well. It's going to annoy the gamer. They're annoying enemies. But I kind of get the feeling that I'm not going to be able to kind of come round to mastering this game with its gameplay. Something tells me that. I'm not sure, but the Lurkers and the Guardians as well. You get up to a Guardian, You blow him up with an explosive. In Dead Space 2, he's done like that. They did nerf them maybe too much. But in the first game, the pain's in the asses. But you've got to kill all the tentacles. I kill the tentacles, and then they come back. I don't know. Chapter 7 was fantastic. My favourite chapter in the game. They made the hive mind a little tougher. But just, look at the Leviathan fight in Chapter 6. To the original, to the remake. Listen to the audio. Look at how intense the gameplay looks in the original compared to the remake, and you'll see what I'm saying. Not all aspects of this remake are better than the original, but I think they did a damn good job. I'm happy with it overall, and it's a lot better than I was anticipating because I thought it would be an absolute broken mess. However, I've got to say, the game, not impossible, thankfully, although if it did crash, you wouldn't lose all your progress because you can just load up your last save. You've got to scum save all the time, guys. Callisto Protocol never crashed on me once after the first day patch. Dead Space Remake crashed half a dozen times at least so far. Go online. Which game do people think is better made? They think Dead Space Remake's better made. It's not. But both games are good. I think neither are masterpieces. It's going to be interesting now, ladies and gentlemen. Resident Evil fucking 4 remake. I'm so hyped for that game because I love the original so much. This is Capcom. They've got clout. These guys know what they're doing. But the thing that Capcom have struggled with, more so than anything else in the last 15 years in a post-Mikami Capcom, ladies and gentlemen, is the gameplay. And that's what Resident Evil 4 was amazing at. It's a 20-hour plus game. Apparently, the island and all that shit is still in the game. But I don't think Capcom have got it in them to not cut corners. I don't think they're capable of making a 20-hour plus game, and I don't think it'll be on the level of the original. I'm telling you now, I don't think the remake will be as fun as the original game. I think the upgrade system will be very similar. I think the rocket launcher is a lot more expensive. You've got durability on the knife, which pisses me off because one of the things that I love about Resident Evil 4 is that balance of the knife. Fuck the Code Veronica knife. The balance in Resi 4 is perfect. They're on the floor, 4 or 5 swipes, just about killed. Oh, another enemy's coming at you. Oh, you're shooting them in the head. Oh, they ducked. The shotgun, the crowd control, the grenades. Everything about that game is phenomenal. It's a freaking masterpiece. Capcom have got it all to do. But I'm just going to be there for the experience and see what it's like. I'm going to be playing, obviously, Series X performance mode. Should be pretty good. Hopefully they sort out those rain effects. If you've seen it online, what the hell were they thinking? Grand Theft Auto Defective Edition. You know what I'm saying? It looks bloody awful. But we know that Ashley's not going to be objectified. We can tell she's going to be a strong, independent woman, which is absolutely fine, of course. If you liked it, you should have put a ring on it, ladies and gentlemen. But at 43 minutes, I'm done. Going to end this video talking about Resi 4 Remake because 100% that'll be the first game that we talk about in about 6 months' time when it's time for the next gaming pickups video. I wish this could have been more concise, ladies and gentlemen, but I just had to talk in great length about the Callisto Protocol in Dead Space. But I tell you what I'm going to do for you motherfuckers. I'm telling you at the end of the video, but you should be looking for the drop-down menu anyway beforehand. I'm going to link the timestamp at the exact time of the video when I talk about each game. I'm not always going to do that because I don't want to give away spoilers before someone watches the video what games I'm going to be talking about. But yeah, as if anyone gives a fuck. Oh my god. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there's so much more that I could speak of with the Dead Space remake, but in all honesty, who gives a shit? Will they remake 2 and 3? I hope they don't. Remaster 2 and 3, give us a 4th game. Not going to happen though, because EA, they'll have expected 10 million plus units sold on that game by now. It's probably sold about 1.5 million, 2 million within the next couple of weeks. The fucking idiots. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. What's coming up in the next few weeks? Elliott Smith, the legend. 20 years since he stabbed himself in the chest. What a way to go. Worst to best, ranking his albums. There'll be another albums ranked worst to best later in the year in the autumn time. Red House Painters, the legend that is Mark Kozilek, even though he's not a very nice man. And Resident Evil 4, I'm hoping to bring it to the channel first playthrough, mostly off microphone. I'm thinking, because the game's going to be much longer, I'm going to be doing one video that's an hour long, and that's probably going to hurt the views. But when it's a first playthrough, I don't do it for the views. I find it very, very tough to do walkthroughs of Capcom's hardest difficulties with Resident Evil because I don't think they understand what makes the hardest difficulty fun. I've spoke about this before. Madhouse, Resi 7, absolutely bonkers and stupid. Resident Evil 8 Village, Village of Shadows, you can only do it in New Game Plus unless you want to lose your sanity. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? Capcom, you was proud. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.